Dr. John, we also have some new information today on the coronavirus in kids. Let's talk about that. More than 500,000 kids in the U.S. have had COVID-19, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics. More than 70,000 of those cases reported in just a 2-week period from August 20th to September 3rd. That's a 16% spike. That's a 2-week period that ended less than a week ago. What else does this report tell us about the virus in kids, especially as we know kids are going back to school right now?
And Allison, what it tells us is that kids definitely do get this virus and they can be affected by it. And like you said, the American Academy of Pediatrics is saying since the pandemic started, over 500,000 kids have gotten COVID-19. That's just under 10% of the COVID-19 cases. And so they are getting it. They are suffering consequences from it. And granted, they don't get it as much or have as many complications as adults do, but they can get it and they can certainly spread it on. And like you mentioned, over the last few weeks, they've really seen a spike in those cases. They think part of that is because of more testing, but also part of that is because these kids tend to be grouping together in the summer, doing more activities with other kids and other family members, and they're getting coronavirus that way and spreading it as well. The concern is when they go back to school, what's going to happen. Now, the school is a more controlled environment, so that's certainly going to help, and schools have guidelines and guidance in place to what to do in case there is a coronavirus outbreak or some cases in their school, but those need to be followed very closely, and the students, the parents, the staff, the teachers all need to make sure they understand exactly what to do in cases like that, Allison.
Dr. John, I know a big concern, especially in multi-generational families, are that kids may go back to school, then they'll bring the coronavirus home with them and infect their families, particularly if they've got older family members, grandparents who may live with them. Advice for parents to help reduce those odds, to try to get their kids to and from school more safely?
And you're right, Allison, and that's what that American Academy of Pediatrics report is showing us, that they can get it, they can bring it home. If they bring it home, they can spread it to other family members. And those families have multi-generations in their house, especially ones with the elderly who might be at higher risk or those with pre-existing conditions. You want to be extra careful there. So a few things parents can do is understand what's going on at the school. Talk to the school beforehand and during school to find out what's going on with COVID cases there. If there is a case in the school, how close was your child to that? Should you be concerned about them? Should they be quarantined? And what do you do with other family members? Well, if the one child is potentially exposed, they need to be quarantined, separated from those other family members that are at higher risk, definitely. And then, of course, the masks, the hand washing, the distancing we're talking about. But the main thing is to understand what's going on at the school so you can prepare for what you need to do at home, Allison.
All right, Dr. John, always great to see you. Thank you so much.
You bet.
I love it because it's a school setting. Now here they can actually have somebody physically right there with them, watching them, that is a teacher, and having a teacher on the computer. So it's like a win-win situation.
I work from home some days. I will, go into the office some days. It just depends, and I'm blessed to have that flexibility, but I'm not at home every day. So it's important that my daughter has somewhere that she can go and feel safe, and that she will still get the learning that she's supposed to.
I begin to think about kids and what the school does for them. Certainly it's the place where they get an education, but it's also the place where many of those kids eat. It's the place where many kids are referred for a health service, especially for a mental health service. It's the place where children who live in an environment that's not safe for them, it's their safe place to go. And I begin to think about our churches that were at that time, and still mostly are here in Houston, they're closed. And so we have all this space.
When we said, well, what if our United Methodist churches opened up and allow students to come in and have access and provide a loving and encouraging environment, and we can kind of connect with the school district, it'll be like a match made in heaven.
This is like more of a safe environment for her to be around. It's time for me to be back in work. I've been at home working since March, so it's time for me to be back to work. And they offer lunch, they offer breakfast, stretch time, outside time, so this is like perfect for the kids.
The reason why I chose this option for my kids to go to church is because I did not have the internet service and plus the time schedule. So, like, I can't be with my kids and go to work during the daytime at the same time.
I think some of them would have quit their jobs. I think they would have been out and hustled again looking for some more friends they could, get their kids to stay with. It's just such a heart-wrenching decision to have to make. And I'm sorry that some of them would have had to quit their jobs, because in this environment that we're in now with COVID, there aren't a lot of opportunities. So you got to hang on to what you got.
And Priscilla joins me now. Priscilla, we heard from parents using the program there, the directors. Tell us more about how it works. What a wonderful thing for families who just need to go back to work.
Certainly, Allison. There are a number of initiatives happening across the greater Houston area to help students return to school virtually safely. We're actually in one of the study zones here in Harris County that can accommodate around 150 students. All of these tables about 6 feet apart to ensure that they have the distancing in order to work here and do so safely. There's free Wi-Fi, and you might hear a little hum. If you take a look up there, you can probably see there are gigantic fans here to help keep students cool, because they are going to be outside if they choose to come here, and so that they can be comfortable as they're doing that virtual learning. But we also spent part of the day at those sanctuaries of learning that Houston Independent School District has done in partnership with a number of churches across that area. And what happens there is that each church actually has a site coordinator who works with the schools in that community to identify families who might be in need of that type of learning environment, who do have to physically go into work every day and can't be home with their students to help them with those assignments. And so those students pack up those laptops, they take them into those churches, and we got a peek inside that one where you heard from those parents just a little while ago, and most of the students were divided into classrooms with 3 to 4 students per classroom, still doing their learning virtually, but there was an adult in the room to monitor them, to help them if they needed it. And that is exactly what's key here, and what a lot of the parents that I spoke to were looking for. And that's also going to go a long way for teachers. Back in the spring, I spoke with a number of teachers when virtual learning was first becoming a thing, and some of the challenges that were mentioned to me were that some students didn't have Wi-Fi and so had to work on a phone, or an older sibling was doing their virtual learning while also watching the younger sibling. So certainly this will help as teachers and parents and students navigate the challenges of a very unconventional school year. Allison?
So one of the things that I did right after the presidential primary because of COVID is buy new automation equipment so we could double our capacity. And we were really geared up in the March primary to handle about 1.2 million ballots. Now we can handle all 1.7 million if we had to. Wow. So what you're seeing here right now is this test material going through. It's the same thing we would be doing with live ballots, is sorting these ballots and preparing them for opening.
When a ballot gets here, what happens?
So when your ballot arrives, the first thing it does is go into this piece of equipment. And what this piece of equipment does at a very high speed is it's capturing your signature that you signed on the ballot itself. So it goes through this system to flatten it out, and then it goes into a pocket. So all we're doing is capturing your signature, because what I need to do is to compare your signature to your original signature that's on file to make sure that this ballot is okay to open.
So a human is comparing the signature here?
Correct. Correct. A human being is comparing every single signature. I don't use software, and I think that's a better way to go.
What happens if your signature is not legitimate?
If your signature does not match, it goes to another tier for additional review. And if that team says it doesn't match, it goes to a final tier for review, and then we'll send a letter to the voter.
But if your signature is legit and it's approved, then where does this ballot go?
Then it comes right back through this piece of equipment again. We sort it down to the precinct level, so each individual precinct throughout Orange County. So if I have to do a recount after the election, I don't have to go back and sort all these again. And then it's also outsorted for good signatures and bad signatures. If it's a good ballot, it's then going to go to one of these stations over here. It comes into this machine here, and this will split the envelope open and allow the operator to take the ballot out without seeing the ballot.
To maintain that anonymity of the ballot.
Exactly. It maintains the secrecy of the ballot. So for instance, when it comes out, it's still folded. He would never see it, and it's separated from that envelope forever. You can never connect the two back together. So then at another station, we would open this up and prepare it for scanning so it's flat.
To count the votes.
To count the votes, exactly. And when it hits that team over there, they cannot connect a name with the ballot itself.
Because this is just your secret ballot, that is it.
That's correct. So what happens is, after that opening process is done and the ballot is flattened, this is the moment of truth, because now it comes in and we scan it and we're capturing all of the data where the voter actually voted.
And how will it be different than past elections?
It'll be twice as fast. And that's one of the things right in the spring that I realized we've got to get this under control to be prepared for it.
How long did it take you to get all this stuff set up?
What did that take us, 6 months, roughly?
So this is a very long, intensive process to get ready for the surge in vote by mail.
I mean, elections are complex, and the technology and the systems that are used, you cannot stand that up overnight. And you have to be very careful and diligent about what you're doing. So that's why we're taking extra pains to do this.
So all of this will happen starting in October.
Correct.
But none of the actual counting of the vote happens till
7:30 roughly on election night is when we start. And then I can't post anything until after 8 o'clock on election night. That's in state law.
So all the logistics first and the exciting stuff on election day.
Yeah, and you know, this is really important because you don't want to know who the winners and losers are before election day. And so none of my team knows, and we don't know because we haven't tallied the votes yet. So you don't do that until election night.
It's a privilege to see it up close.
Yeah, and see how the sausage is made.
Yeah,
Right.
You guys have been working on this 24/7, anticipating what's to come. There are other counties across the country that don't have the resources, don't have the experiences you do. Do you see any red flags in other counties? You're talking to them.
Yeah, there's 3,000 counties across the country, so there's obviously a very diverse set of rules and election officials and how they handle this across the country. But that's the way the Constitution by our founding fathers was kind of set up for it to be dispersed like that. I think we're only as good as our weakest link, and as sophisticated as we are, I do my best to help colleagues around the country with best practices and information sharing to make sure that we have a solid system.
And NBC News can help you figure out how to vote in the 2020 presidential election. We have a new state-by-state guide. It's called Plan Your Vote, and it has all sorts of information on voting rules, deadlines, and restrictions by state. You can check it out at NBCnews.com/planyourvote.